Hi, my name is Dr. Michael Batu, and today we're going to discuss output and prices in the short run. So this will be the first of many videos about output and prices and demand and supply shocks in the economy. So you see here, there's number one. This is the first of these videos. So what I have here are two graphs where it shows the following. It shows AD, which is our aggregate demand. It's downward sloping. And I'm not going to define what AD is in this video. So I would refer you to my lecture notes for you to go over what we mean by aggregate demand and how it's derived. Also, we have our aggregate supply right here, upward sloping. And we have this solid line right here. This solid line indicates our long-run aggregate supply, which also indicates where our economy should be in the long run. This Y star is what we call potential output. Okay, potential output. This is what where our economy should be when productive resources like land, labor, and capital are fully employed. So that's where Y star is. Now, note here in this graph, in this panel, in this side right here, that we have the intersection of aggregate demand and aggregate supply right here, and we have our equilibrium output Y0. Note that Y0 is to the left of Y star. Okay? Now, what happens there is the following. In order for our economy to go back to its potential level, this aggregate supply curve has to shift to the right. Okay? Now, if potential output is to the right, okay, is to the right of equilibrium outputs, in other words, if Y star is to the right of Y0, then we have what we call a recessionary gap. Okay. When our economy is producing less than its potential output, there are inputs that are not being used in the economy. So in other words, there might be surplus labor, there might be surplus physical capital, there might even be surplus land. So in other words, there are inputs out there that are not being used. The fact that there are inputs that are not used, which means that firms or producers in this economy can buy or can rent those resources at a lower cost. So when that happens, the supply curve or the aggregate supply curve should shift to the right. So let me write down what I just said. So there will be surpluses. There will be surpluses of factor inputs. And as a result, unit costs decrease. And when unit costs decrease, the AS curve shifts to the right. Or AS curve, because there's only one. So AS curve shifts to the right. Until the recessionary gap is gone. So in other words, by way of a graph, it will look like the following. So our AS curve is right here, and then it will shift to the right until the recessionary gap is gone. So I call this guy AS1. Okay. And the result, too, is that the overall price level in the economy ends up being lower. Okay. So I call that P1. And our economy goes back to Y star. So let me just write an arrow here, right here, meaning that the result would be prices drop and output increased from Y0 going to Y star. And let me write here the arrow just to indicate the direction of the shift of our aggregate supply curve. Okay. Now, this is the case when our equilibrium output in the short run is to the left of Y star. Or alternatively, Y star is to the right of Y0. But what about if our Y star is to the left of Y0, just like right here in this side? So what's going on here? Well, when this happens, what's going on is that the economy is using resources possibly more than its capacity. So for instance, the economy might be employing workers, and these workers are doing multiple shifts. Or they're using machineries like 24 hours. So that's why this economy is producing way beyond than its potential at Y star. This results to what we call an inflationary gap. Okay, so this is the opposite of recessionary gap. In what sense? Well, since the economy is operating beyond its capacity, there will be a shortage. There will be a shortage of factor inputs. Okay, so there will be a shortage of factor inputs. Unit costs increase. And when unit costs increase, there will be a contraction of supply in your economy. Your aggregate supply curve will shift to the left. So AS curve shifts to the left until the inflationary gap is gone. So, by way of a graph, how do we show that? Well, our AS curve will simply shift to the left, right here, until this inflationary gap is gone. I call this guy AS1, and the new price level is P1. That's why it's called an inflationary gap, because the end result of this is that the overall price level in the economy goes up from P0 to P1, and output decreases from Y0 to Y1. So just to recap, there are two types of output gaps that we have right here. We have the recessionary gap, which results from the fact that our Y star is to the right of Y0. And we have the other type of output gap, which we call an inflationary gap, which results when your Y star or your potential output is to the left of our short-run equilibrium, Y0. I hope you liked the video. Make sure you understand this concept, because we're going to be using this in the next video. I'll see you soon.